Asia-chan, you don't need to do the laundry so early in the morning. The kind nun gave a cute smile and answered, "Oh, it's no problem whatsoever, Oto-sama." She gave a small hum and hefted the basket into her arms. "I just thought since I had a moment I would put our clothes in the washer before we forgot." The older man swooned at the young girl's kindness. "Thank you, Asia-chan." "Asia-chan." A woman called from down the stairs as she was cooking the rice and eggs for the morning. "Can you come help me with breakfast? I need to focus on the lunches and I want to make sure I don't burn the eggs." "Okay, Okawa-sama." Asia replied before she looked down at the basket in her arms. "Oh no," she said she was going to do the laundry. But she needed to help with breakfast. What should she do? What should she do? Her inner panicking was silenced as the basket was lifted from her arms and she saw Issei giving her a reaffirming smile. "It's okay, Asia. You can go help mom, I got this." "Are you sure?" Asia asked her best friend and roommate apprehensively. He nodded, "Totally. Despite mom and dad's disbelief. I can wash my clothes if I tried." He smiled. "You can go help. I've got this." Asia gave a big smile and nodded. "Thank you, Issei-san." She quickly moved to the stairs and descended them to go help his mother cook breakfast and lunch. Like an angel coming down from heaven. That's what Asia was in his household. A little angel that suddenly appeared in their lives and made everything better. She was polite, kind, she cooked, she cleaned. She was like the perfect daughter that his parents were forever denied when they saw he had a little member between his legs when he was born. And he appreciated having a companion and best friend to be by his side almost every day. Plus there were a lot of benefits to being in the same house with a girl like that. He was currently carrying a basket with some of her bras and panties. He sometimes got to see her coming out of the shower with a towel supported around her body. She came into his room some nights and slept beside him in his bed and her warmth enveloped him like a heavy blanket. Plus, there were those few times Asia tried to act more devilish and wear some sexy lingerie in front of him. He didn't know how turned on he could get at the sight of a girl wearing sexy underwear while still being bashful and meek about it. Then again, he supposed not every girl could pull off wearing something like that as boldly as Bucko could, or Akeno-san. Oh, and that was another thing that had been changing in his life recently. The absolutely huge boost in sexy ladies around him since he turned into a devil. It had to be like 1000% better than it was before he became a part of the peerage. He loved being a devil. He had more fun. He was making friends. He was connecting with people. There were boobs. He got to do some good. There were boobs. He met Asia. Boobs, boobs, boobs. Should I just assume that since your mind is usually clouded with thoughts like this, I should only be worried if you don't have the female body on the mind at the time? Issei grinned perversely as he walked into the laundry room. "Oh, no problem there. My mind is always on stuff like this. You won't have to worry about anything." "You say that, but the fact you admit it is concerning in its own way." "Well, that's your problem then." Issei replied simply before his eyes widened when he realized he was talking to the same strange voice as last night. He looked around. Who said that? "What? You don't know who I am? I should feel hurt." Issei was panicking. "Where are you? I'm with you. Every waking moment." What? I suppose that was a bit too ominous. Down here." Issei looked down and saw a light fade under the skin beneath the back of his left hand. He lifted it up and stared at the back of his hand. "The jewel?" "My jewel, actually. I'm the spirit of the dragon that inhabits boosted gear." Issei's eyes widened. "Why, you're alive?" "Not in most technical senses, but yes." Issei marveled at the thought that his sacred gear had a consciousness in it. He looked his hand over, analyzing the light that emanated from his hand in wonder. "So, you live in the sacred gear or something?" "My original body was destroyed, mutilated, taken apart, and hidden from the world so that I nor anyone else may ever reconstruct it to access its massive reserves of power. God took my soul, bound it to a gauntlet, created the boosted gear, and cursed me to live out the rest of eternity under another's rule." "Oh, wow." Issei droned, feeling rather uncomfortable and unnerved by the lengths God and these other people went to make sure this dragon didn't get his body back. Issei awkwardly spoke. That sucks." "Yes. But I've come to count the small blessings I get. For example, I suppose I should be glad I was not materialized in your right hand." Issei was befuddled. "What does that? Oh, yeah, I get it. Did that seem too easy? No, it was funny, thank you. Issei looked around the room and didn't know how to continue the conversation with the spirit in his gauntlet. He scratched his head. So, do I call you Boosted Gear or? I've had many names over the millennia. The Red Dragon Emperor is the most prominent. The Welsh Dragon. The Red Death. The Scarlet Plague. But my true name is Diedrich. You can choose any of those you prefer. Oh, okay. Issei looked down at his hand and gave a small bow. Thanks for your help, Diedrich. You're thanking me? Yeah, why, is that weird? Well, most of the previous hosts for the Boosted Gear never thanked me for something like this. They usually demand more strength and power from me every chance they can. And they're quite angry when they do. Oh, well, because of you I've been able to get stronger recently and keep up with everyone else in my group. So of course I owe you some thanks. Well, you're quite welcome. Issei flailed his arms around a bit in panic before slamming them down and turning back. Hey dad. The father with the glasses and some wrinkles looked around the small room and then at his son. Were you talking to yourself? Issei drew a blank and was silent in thought before just nodding. Why yeah dad, I was just talking to myself. Going over some stuff we're studying in class. Making sure I got it. His father seemed skeptical of his son going over a topic in school before he noticed the basket of laundry in front of him. He asked, why are you doing the laundry? Huh? Issei looked back down at the reason he came in here and bopped himself in the head. He nodded. Right, I told Asia that if she wanted to go help with breakfast then I could handle the laundry. He started taking out the clothes and filling the machine. She helps around so much that I didn't want to let her do too much at once. She is our guest after all. He felt a hand rest on his shoulder. Issei. He looked back and saw his father crying happily and sniffling his nose. I had no idea even my pervert of a son could have some chivalrous moments when he tried. He started crying into his sleeve. Maybe Asia-chan won't be so bad off being stuck with a guy like you. Thanks dad. Yeah, makes me real warm and fuzzy hearing you say that. His dad gave him a quick thumbs up and backed out the room. Good luck trying to score well with Asia-chan's son. He then left in a dash to go help the ladies downstairs and get ready for work. Issei was just glaring at the spot his dad just left and shook his head. My parents. He then sighed and continued doing the laundry while talking to the spirit that inhabited his sacred gear. I guess we should be pretty lucky he didn't hear you talking, huh? That won't be a problem. Most people can't hear me when I talk with you. Something of a private conversation between you and I, only those that have similar sacred gears. Ones with spirits lingering inside of them. Can hope to hear us, or if I decide to let other people hear us talk as well. Issei was silent before asking, so? Unless you let them hear you. If I talk to you it'll look like you are talking to yourself, yes. Great. Issei deadpanned, not looking forward to the idea of appearing like a crazy psycho talking to his hand in front of others. That was going to be fun. Issei kept filling laundry until something crossed his mind. Wait. If you could hear me and talk with me, why are you only now doing it? There hasn't been a reason to until now. Usually I let some time pass and let my hosts get stronger before I greet them. But it seems like the sooner the better considering what's going to happen. Issei stopped unloading the basket and looked at his hand. What's going to happen? I'm not sure, but call it a sense of foreboding. Devil, Rias was walking to school with Kaneko traveling by her side. She was speaking to her little rook lightly about their classes. I have a quiz on the Meiji period in history and we're going over more algebraic formulas in math. What about you? How are you doing with the classes? Kaneko looked up. I'm fine, she pointed out with a cute little pout, but it's still kinda boring. I'm sure there are a lot of people that think that way as well, Kaneko. Rias noted before looking back down. Have you been keeping in touch with Gasper? Kaneko gave a small nod. Gia-kun texts me every few hours, asking me what we went over in class. If I've caught up with all the new shows and if I'm watching anything new. And he wants to know if everyone is okay. But nothing about leaving the room, I reckon. Nope. I figured. Rias sighed and accepted that her cute little bishop probably didn't want to come out of his room just yet. Children and their feelings and hormones. It was just so hard to deal with them sometimes. She resigned herself and asked the younger girl for a favor. Can you make sure he's eating his vegetables? I don't want to scrutinize him, but I at least want to make sure he can keep up with meals while he's staying in his room. You can ask him if you want. Kaneko noted, if there's anyone Gya-kun would listen to without argument it would be you, Bucko. I know, but he feels more comfortable talking with you. I'm pretty sure you're his best friend, despite all your teasing. Rias then gave her a wry look out of the corner of her eye, then again. Maybe I should ask someone who actually eats their vegetables to make sure he does. Kaneko avoided her eyes and looked aside like a child being called out by their parent. Rias giggled a little. I know you don't like them, Kaneko. You never have, but they're good for you. Eat them and they'll help you grow. Kaneko's eyes turned back to her and wandered up to the slightly jiggling mounds of flesh protruding from Rias' chest. Kaneko squinted her eyes, not anywhere important. What was that? Nothing. Rias decided to continue on from the previous topic to something more fun. What did you think about going back to the forest yesterday? It was quite a lot of fun, don't you think? Kaneko shook her head with a mild scowl. I didn't like the slime. Yeah, I didn't either. Rias admitted with a scowl of her own, remembering the creatures that nearly humiliated them by withering away their clothes to nothing. She gave a small nod, but we won't have to be worrying about them anymore. Agreed. It was a moment in silence before a fond smile came over the crimson-haired woman's face. She gave a soft laugh before looking down at the shorter girl. I remember when we first brought you to the forest a few years back. You were so scared and you hid behind me looking around like a timid little girl. Kaneko looked off to the side with a slight pink hue of embarrassment at remembering her nervousness that day. She whispered out, I was younger back then. Not much younger. Rias pointed out as she smiled at Kaneko's pout. She then looked back up, but I remember when we were walking through the forest and you finally spotted that little kitten walking around the trunk of a tree. You just stopped. And without saying another word you walked over, picked her up, nuzzled her close and… Shiro. That's right. Rias smiled and nodded. That was one of the first times I had seen you smile back in the old days. The senior girl gave a small laugh. I just remembered that when I saw Asia get her familiar yesterday. Kaneko gave a small nod. Asia's senpai seemed really happy. Yeah, it's too bad the others couldn't make it in time to come with us. I bet Issei would have enjoyed being in the company of those slime creatures. And Naruto. Rias didn't say anything more when in the corner of her eye she saw Kenko give a slight hunch of her shoulder and a guilty look to the side. Rias looked down in thought before asking, so you're sure about what he was using? Kaneko was silent before giving a hesitant nod of the head. Immense boost of strength and speed. The change in facial features. How the usually aloof but undeniably kind older boy became far more unhinged and ruthless in those few minutes. Even if he did use a number of different abilities at the time, the base technique was still overly familiar to her. Kaneko weakly muttered out with a hint of worry and fear in her voice, Senjutsu. Ria's face took a pinch of empathy for the young girl's feelings to the special technique. She remembered just how much that technique had twisted and destroyed her old life, and left a deep scar in her heart that hasn't fully healed even after all this time. During the fight with Riser, even Rias could tell how much more powerful Naruto was after using that technique. And that for a few moments, it looked like he wasn't totally in control of his actions during the fight. And while Rias was more than just curious to ask him what he did, she made a promise that she would wait until he was ready to tell her everything about himself. It was the same thing she did with all her peerage when they first joined. They needed time to adjust and trust her and each other. But she knew what having a technique like this did to worry the young rook. She was already unconsciously preparing for the worst, and she was obviously disheartened at the idea of losing someone she was quickly considering a friend. Rias stopped in the street, causing Kaneko to look up from her solemn gaze and turn back to her. King, she asked, Bucko? Rias didn't want to say it, knowing what feelings it brought up in the young girl, but she had to say it. Rias softly spoke, Kaneko. Naruto isn't like your sister. Kaneko's eyes widened in shock before she looked aside in shame. Was she really still that badly affected by it? Enough that even Bucko would have to say something? She whispered, I know, but… I know it might not seem like it, but he is in control. He's not losing himself to the madness and he told me he wasn't going to abuse that technique because he only just got it back. Rias reassured the little freshman kindly with a smile, he won't risk it. Kaneko was silent and her mouth turned a little before she lowered her gaze down at the ground. I know. Naruto-senpai is nice and kind. But I remember that was what it was like before it happened. Kaniko's mouth turned into a small, guilty frown as she remembered her reluctance to interact with him the last few days and his confusion at her change in attitude. She lowered her head. I didn't mean to react like that, but… Before Kenko could talk anymore, Rias brought her little rook close and gave her a quick hug. She spoke with a comforting tone to the sweet girl. I think you may be overthinking this. But you always have a tendency to think and criticize yourself for the little mistakes. She affectionately placed a hand on her head. You're my sweet little girl and I promise I won't let you ever experience something like that again if it's in my power to help. We won't let Naruto succumb to that hatred by any chance. And if he does, well, I'll just beat him up myself and knock the sense back into him. Kaniko kept a keen ear open to Rias's words before closing her eyes and leaning further into the warm hug that enveloped her. Since she was younger, a hug like this always somehow calmed her nerves and kept her sane. She opened an eye again. Bucko. I want to apologize to Naruto-senpai. Rias pulled back and looked down at the freshman. I don't think you have to. Just talk to him again and I think he'll respond in kind. I know. Kenko gave a small nod before meekly looking aside. Still, I want to say I'm sorry for acting like that. Rias laughed a little before patting her head. Okay. Well, if you really feel like that, then I can ask him to go see you during your lunch period or something. Not like he'll mind skipping a class to come say hi to you. Kaniko gave a very small smile and nodded. Thank you. No problem. Rias separated from her friend and they continued their walk to school. Come on. We don't want to be late. Devil, hey Issei, Asia-chan, let's eat together. Yeah, come on, join us. Asia blinked in surprise at Motohama and Matsuda's eagerness to get her to eat with them. She perked up with joy and nodded. Oh, of course. She turned to her best friend, Issei-san. Let's go eat with Motohama-san and Matsuda-san. Issei blinked in horrified shock and stared at his two friends angrily. Just as he was about to go out and have a peaceful lunch with Asia, these two jackasses appeared. He really wanted to tell them no and laugh while walking away. But Asia just considered their proposal as a fun activity and he didn't have the heart to turn her down. He gave a reluctant smile and a weak nod. Why yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. Asia gave a cute giggle before giving a small bow. I just need to go and grab my bento. Excuse me. Asia moved back to the classroom and Issei cheerfully waved her off. Take your time. Issei raised his arms and stopped the aggressive palm attacks of his two friends. The three best friends growled at each other like primal animals with loathing and hate filling their voices. Issei growled, "Hey buddies. What's wrong with you guys today?" "What's wrong?" The bald member of the duo spoke rhetorically before glaring at the brown-haired member of their group like he had committed some great betrayal. "You know what's wrong, you bastard. What's wrong is that you're going off to cuddle up and get all lovey-dovey with Asia-chan during lunch." The glasses-wearing teen continued off as he kept trying to push against Issei's arm but found a surprising amount of resistance. He nearly cried out, "It wasn't bad enough that you got to spend all of Golden Week off with the hotties from the orc, was it? Now you're eating with your cute girlfriend by yourself and leaving the rest of us pathetic lonely losers by ourselves." Matsuda cried out in anguish. "You used to lead the loser trio and now you've abandoned us, you prick." Issei forced them back and grumbled while fixing his uniform. If they only knew that during the break he was doing nothing else but train and get his ass handed to him on a daily basis. Of course he did see some bare breasts and nipple when Rias and Akeno walked out of the bath and while he was working his new technique on Asia. Well, maybe he was leading a much better life away from these guys now. He chuckled proudly. Maybe I'm just growing up, guys. Becoming a better man and everything. Can't just sit around watching porn all night long. The two other perverts looked between each other before Motohama fixed his glasses and smirked. Well, if you feel that way about it then there's no reason to let you borrow the new, through and in the back door volume 7, I just got delivered to me yesterday. Volume 7. Issei exclaimed in shock as an almost childlike wonder filled his eyes. I thought that was just a myth. Hey, you'll let me borrow it, right? Right? Don't know. It's really just for us losers. Matsuda mocked while folding his arms and speaking in a high, condescending manner. And weren't you beyond the childishness of porn like us? Issei grumbled and cupped his chin before sighing. Fine. If I let you guys come eat lunch with us, then can I borrow the porn? Deal. They both announced with outstretched hands, which Issei eagerly took and sealed their deal with a shake. He didn't know whether to tell them they just made a deal with the devil to lend him some porn, but decided to keep that as an inside joke for himself. He pulled his hands back and had to inquire, "But why are you guys so eager to come eat with us anyway? This is our lunch period. Doesn't that usually mean you guys would sneak off without me and peek through the changing room of the seniors?" "Usually. But now Asia-chan and you have started to mingle. Which means your natural horny tendencies are starting to stir and grow in the presence of a smoking hot babe like her. And God knows what you'll do to Asia-chan when the time comes. She's probably experienced enough of a crappy life so far without having to deal with fending you off with a stick. As gentlemen, it is up to us to protect Asia-chan's chastity and intercept, cock block, and blueball you at every turn." Issei's eyebrow twitched as he gave a forced grin. "Geez, thanks for the heroics, dicks." But then he realized they said something about Asia's unfortunate past and knew he never told them anything about her being from the church. He asked, "What did you guys mean a crappy life? What were you talking about?" The two perverts looked between each other and then back at the last pervert. "Well duh, dumbass. We're talking about her being the little sister to Uzumaki-senpai, duh." Oh shit. Kiba's elaborate, little lie to avoid all questions about Asia's past, he nearly forgot. Kiba said there was something about their household where the family had problems and had to separate. And now she's staying in Japan and has to stay with you, right? The bald teen crossed his arms and tilted his head. "Geez. I wonder how bad the house had to be to produce a bad egg like Uzumaki-senpai but have a sweet girl like Asia-chan too. Why yeah. Makes you wonder." Issei turned his head and gave a nervous chuckle at the matter. The subject about shady pasts started bringing up some thoughts that he had always seemed to forget to ask the man in question. Something crossed his mind before he asked his two friends, "Hey, do you guys know where all the crazy rumors and bad stories about Naruto-senpai came from in the first place?" "What do you mean, where did they come from?" Motohama asked rhetorically before counting off his fingers. "He never comes to school. When he does, he barely shows up to class. He always gets into fights." "Well, I guess that's understandable because some guys try to hustle him for money or pick on him and he's just protecting himself. But he always beats up the bigger guys like a pro. Like he's some kinda trained fighter or assassin or whatever." Issei shrugged. "Yeah, but that didn't start all those crazy rumors about him having underworld connections and being a thug, right? Where did those come from?" Matsuda held his arms out like a ghost and started speaking in a creepy voice. "They say. Years ago, a lone teen with blonde hair walked into town. Scars on his face like whiskers on an animal, and 2 cigars in his mouth because he was so damn hardcore. People backed away because he strode through the town with blood and dirt all over him, like a man that had just walked away from a slaughter. He had his hands in his pockets, an evil sneer on his face, and a single look at anyone around him sent them screaming and running home. He lowered his arms and nodded. Rumors say that was Uzumaki-senpai and that he was part of a gang fight or something before coming here." "And do you guys actually believe that?" Issei asked incredulously before shrugging. "I mean, he's come to my club a lot over the last few days and he's harmly, I mean. He's Nick, I mean. He's cool, I mean. He's..." Issei seemed unsure about what to follow up with. "Not as bad as I thought he was." "You don't sound like you actually mean that." "Yeah, I don't know. He's kind of a hard guy to figure out." "Well, whatever you think he is, aren't you worried about the girls in your club?" Motohama inquired with anxious yet slightly intrigued wonder. "I mean, Asia-chan's his little sister, so she's safe, but what about the other girls?" Issei raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "We're talking about the kind of stuff he could be making the other girls in the orc do while you're not around." Matsuda finished explaining before a creepy blush came across both their faces and they looked up and thought, like, what if he's engaging in some heavy petting scenarios with Kaneko-chan? Kaneko was dressed in a white one-piece swimsuit and flinching while Naruto's fingers roamed over her body as she sat in his lap. She quietly moaned out while Naruto chuckled, "Senpai." And don't forget that he got in trouble with Himejima-senpai last year when he broke into the locker room or something. Maybe he finally decided to take a chance and grab those wonderful mounds he saw last time. Akeno innocently moaned as Naruto cupped her massive breasts and started bouncing and moving them around. Akeno couldn't contain her moans and whimpered out, "You Uzumaki-kun. Why you can't? We're just students. Naruto didn't stop fondling her breasts as her back arched and she climaxed, "Iya." The two perverts both went red at the final idea that crossed their minds. Or maybe he's going for the grand masterpiece and courting Gremory-sama without anyone knowing. Rias covered her bare breasts and looked aside with embarrassment under Naruto's intense gaze. She looked aside, "You Uzumaki-kun. I don't think I'm ready for this yet." Naruto smirked as he removed his shirt as well, his face completely darkened out except for his smile. He reassured the girl, "There's nothing to worry about, Gremory-san. Every girl feels nervous for their first time. Just relax, and I'll take care of everything." Rias was hesitant before she closed her eyes and braced herself for whatever happened. She finally felt something penetrate her maidenly barrier and let out a small scream, "Ah!" Off to the side, petals started to fall off a flower and stop. Matsuda and Motohama came out of their perverted daydreams and saw Issei holding his hand up to stop them. They asked, "What's wrong?" "So much. That's what's wrong." Issei took a moment to rub the bridge of his nose and sigh. A forceful Naruto? A meek Kaneko? An innocent Akeno? And an embarrassed Rias? Geez. These guys really didn't have any idea how the actual people acted in person, did they? Well, he guessed until only recently he had been speculating how they acted around other people as well because everyone else was too nervous to approach them. A book by its cover really did do a lot to affect a person's image of others. Ah, did the little lechers stop their tales of debauchery already? And it sounded like it was just getting good. The three boys all cringed at the snarky, slightly interested and familiar voice that came from behind them. They turned around and groaned at the sight of the last person they wanted to see right now, or ever. Standing proudly with her arms under her modest chest and a snarky, creepy grin was a girl their age with just a few inches of advantage to Asia in height. She had long, messy brown hair tied up into two mild braids that went down the front of her shoulders. She wore glasses that covered yellow eyes that were slightly lidded with a calm but piercing gaze. This girl was Aika Kiryu. And she was probably the only girl in Kuo Academy that could unnerve the perverted trio. She smirked and fixed her glasses. "What's wrong, boys? I thought those unparalleled imaginations and rampant daydreams of perversion and skinship were incapable of being stopped? Running on empty or something?" The three boys were grumbling in annoyance at their natural enemy's arrival. "Kiryu, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be destroying dreams and ruining people's happiness?" "Oh, I think I can take a break for an afternoon so I can keep terrorizing my three favorite sexual deviants." She gave a big smile, and I'm especially happy I did. Considering you guys are standing in the hallway giving what if scenarios about if Uzumaki-senpai was a total horn dog. She looked behind her shoulder. "Looks like they might be a little jealous about your bad boy brother, Asia." They looked behind the daring girl and saw Asia with a burning red face and shaking after hearing all the possible scandalous acts that could be transpiring in their club room. Her mind was going into overdrive. "And Naruto I mean Oni-sama is." No. Issei stopped Asia's meltdown as her eyes started swirling as she started losing her footing. "It's not real, Asia. None of that was real. It was just the idiots being idiots and talking nonsense. Don't think about it." Asia started turning back into a normal color as Issei's words started bringing her back. Aika poked herself in the cheek and looked up and thought, "You guys are talking so much about how he interacts with the girls that you won't even address the idea of how he is around boys. Like when no one is around, he takes Kiba-kun and—" "No, shut up. No more from you, or any of you." Issei yelled at his two friends and the bespectacled girl in an effort to shut them up completely before her horrific scenario could take root in their minds. He rubbed his forehead and sighed before turning back around. "Okay. I have two things to say. First, just a question. Why are you guys worried that Naruto-senpai would do this stuff but I can't?" They answered immediately with certainty, because you couldn't score even if you tried and God blessed you with the charm of a prince. Issei grumbled, "Okay. I guess that's fine." Issei reluctantly accepted that reasoning with some venom in his voice. He decided to continue anyway, and second, I know the bad representative he gets makes him sound really bad, and he might seem like a jerk. Which he is sometimes, and a dick, and an ass, and… Asia gently pulled on his sleeve. "Issei-san. Right, sorry." He went back on track, "but he isn't nearly as bad as I thought. He's weird, but cool. he stated before shrugging, sorta. The two perverts and the glasses girl thought about what he said about the usually loner boy and didn't know what to say. The two boys shrugged. Well, if you think he's cool then that's enough for me, Issei. Yeah, we'll take your word. Issei's shoulders fell and he looked at his two friends in shock. Wait, seriously? That easy? Yeah, we're friends. We believe you. If you vouch, then that's enough for us. Issei was completely stunned by their apparent, easy acceptance of his opinion about the guy they had never even met. He looked down and saw Asia with a slightly surprised look on her face as well before she looked up and smiled at him. Well, guess that was it. Well, fantastic. Aika clapped and looked around them. If that's it, let's go and start eating. Whoa, when did we invite you to lunch? You invited Asia? It's my duty to make sure nothing weird happens to her while she's around you guys. We beautiful maidens gotta stick together. How are you a beautiful maiden, devil? Gremory-san. The crimson-haired woman stopped her trek to the next class and looked back as the tennis captain ran up to her in a hurry. She let her bag hang from her hand and turned to address the beast tamer that came to talk. Abe-san, to what do I owe the unexpected pleasure? Kiyomi walked up to her before crossing her arms and speaking with a miffed tone at the subtle jab. No reason to be uncomfortable. I just wished to talk to you about the request I asked for assistance with yesterday. And your. She glanced off to the side with mild displeasure, servant's performance. Oh crap. Here it comes. Rias intervened and spoke before she could say anything. I should just inform you that as a respect and service of the Gremory House, we will be willing to pay you back in full for any damages you might have sustained during the process of one of our servants' duties. That includes any and all clothing damage. It's all. Kiyomi shivered and unconsciously covered her breasts in remembering the humiliation she suffered last night, ripped my bikini and jacket up into strain. I had to return home in my school jersey. And I can still feel Hyodo-kun's eyes roaming over me. Rias sighed disappointingly and gave a small bow. I'm terribly sorry about their unruly behavior. Issei and Naruto are still a little rough around the edges while starting out, but they mean well and I hope they were able to finish your task to completion. Kiyomi seemed conflicted for a moment before looking aside. That's what I wished to discuss with you. Rias stood back up and the spiral-haired girl rubbed one of her arms nervously. While their methods were unorthodox and unnecessary, they did indeed complete my request and help me with my mermaid friend. While Kiyomi ran off to the girl's room to grab her jersey, she returned to see Naruto helping pull Esselina to the side and wake her up. Issei was still crouched on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably and blubbering like a child. She was still quite angry about the fact that she was stripped naked and used as bait, but that rage quickly subsided when she realized that Esselina was going to live and was no longer in danger. Even all her anger couldn't stay knowing that her friend was going to be alive. So while she wasn't pleased about being humiliated, she was willing to let that fact slide for now. Kiyomi hid her hands behind her back and meekly looked aside under the gaze of the devil woman. She quietly spoke out, I don't wish to extend this awkward meeting any further, so I will just get to the point. Tell those boys that they need to learn to do their jobs better. She waited for a moment before giving a small nod, and that I am extremely grateful for their assistance last night. Rias was actually surprised by the sudden turn of the conversation. One moment she was complaining about Issei's perversion and Naruto's horrendous customer service. The next she was offering her thanks for their help. And Rias was especially caught off guard by this change because most of her conversations with Kiyomi were tense and rigid, considering one was from a prestigious human family and the other was a famous devil. So while Rias was surprised at first, she gave a small nod and hum in return. Right. I'll make sure to pass that along. Thank you. Kiyomi stood there silently for a moment before deciding to break away and head back to her class. I must be going. I promised to meet some of my friends for lunch and I'm holding them up. Of course. And I hope we'll be able to work together again in the future, Abe-san. Kiyomi seemed annoyed and unenthusiastic about the idea as she gave a hollow reply. Right. I'll just count the seconds until that happens again. She decided to ignore the mild jab at her service and just continue her walk towards the other classroom. She finally arrived and didn't wait a moment before sliding the door open and walking over to her friends' tables. She heard some people gasp in excitement for whatever reason as Akano looked up to greet her. Bucko, just in time. Hey Akano. I came to see if you were ready to eat. Rias stated before looking over at Sona as the bespectacled girl was putting away her notebook. Suna, do you wish to join us? The president looked up at her friend from her position over her bag and gave a small smile. I suppose this will become a regular occurrence now, correct? Rias just gave a pleasant, knowing smile as Sona stood back up and nodded. Well, I don't have any work right now and I'd be lying if I said there wasn't always some entertainment you provided while we ate. Rias gave her a pointed look. You know, some best friends would just agree to the offer instead of providing a reason. Sona just smiled knowing she could still push Rias' buttons after all these years. Of course I'll join you. Great. Akeno added to the conversation. Then shall we push the desks together and eat here again, or find somewhere else to eat? I hear the hills are quite a pleasant place to eat during the day. Sona stated as she secured her bag over her shoulder. Why don't we try out there today and see how it feels? Perfect. Rias said happily before looking around. Now we just need to find Naruto. Where is he? Akeno answered, sorry bucko, but he didn't come to school today. What? Sona responded. Uzumaki-kun didn't show up to class or school. No one has seen him all day. Rias was surprised by that piece of information. Then a little shocked. Then miffed. Then her shoulders were shaking slightly and she was making a mix of a stern scowl and peeved pout. She grumbled, did he skip? Even though I won the bet and he knows he's not supposed to anymore? Well, old habits. Rias gave a reluctant and unamused hum before she resigned herself to the truth that he wasn't coming today. She turned around and headed out the door along with her friends and bemoaned. Well, someone wanted to talk to him, and he isn't even here. If he was going to be absent he should have called and… Oh, right, no phone. Well, if he's just skipping I'm going to be so mad. Akeno said, maybe he is sick? Or perhaps he has a legitimate reason for being absent today? Rias and Sona looked at the ponytailed girl with some skepticism at her words. Akeno gave a pleasant smile. Not that I actually believe that. If anything he's probably just lazing around and forgetting that he's a student so he can sleep. I just said that because anything is possible. You have a rather strange affliction to causing Uzumaki-kun trouble and watching him squirm, don't you Akeno? Why Kaichu, whatever do you mean? Rias gave her, queen, a suspicious look before deciding to push it from thought. If he wasn't here then he would probably be at the ramen shop or his house. The best option was to wait until later tonight and go see him with Kaneko. That way the rook could give an apology and she could pull on his ear for skipping school again. She shrugged her shoulders. Well, I suppose I should do something about his lunch. No reason I should let this go to waste. Sona looked her friend over before finally asking the question that had been running in her head for a while now. Rias, why do you seem so interested in Uzumaki-kun? Huh? I mean lately you have shown a rather keen interest in him that I don't usually see you have in people, especially boys. It's true. Akeno gave an affirming nod. You usually take care of the newest members of your peerage rather well, but you seem to be adding in a bit of something extra while interacting with Naruto-san. Rias was confused. Extra as in what exactly? Like a crush? Or how a girlfriend would act? I think you two are reading into this a bit too much. Not at all. You made him a bento. You fed it to him. You make little bets and you're quite peeved at the thought he would be skipping school. If I didn't know any better I would have thought you were trying to drop some hints on him. Sona gave a small but coy smile directed at her friend. For a girl that stated she would never be interested in boys, it's a rather surprising scene to witness. Rias looked between her two friends in thought before looking forward. They took note that even after what they said, she was not confirming or denying anything. After a moment, Rias smiled and gave a small laugh. Well, he's just interesting that way, I suppose. Devil, flights 534 to Taipei and flight 815 to LAX will be delayed due to worsening weather conditions. Please stay behind the yellow line and wait for your luggage to come around on the belt. Any luggage not picked up will be terminated by the security. All passengers arriving from Vatican City, please stay behind the yellow line and wait for your luggage to come around on the belt. Damn! A man in a suit said impatiently as he looked down at his watch and tapped his foot on the floor. Hurry up. I'm gonna be late. He still didn't see his luggage from his arrival and was doing his best not to curse from the inconvenience. Before his annoyance could bubble over, Him and several other citizens saw something very strange suddenly arrive on the conveyor belt with a metallic thud. Everyone stared at the large object, what appeared to be a cross with rounded sides completely covered in a layer of wrapping that obscured a view of what was beneath it. The man in the suit gaped at the sight of the strange luggage. What the? Excuse me. He looked to the side and saw a shorter figure walk past him and over to the conveyor belt. He could tell it was a female due to the voice despite the unfeminine tone she had. She was dressed in a large white cloak with the hood up to hide her face from sight, and a silver cross to latch the two sides of the cloak together around her neck. She stepped up to the belt and reached out to effortlessly lift the massive package with one hand, stunning and shocking the people staring at the strange occurrence. Come on, would you hurry up? We're late at it as with the landing being delayed. We were supposed to report in, like, an hour ago. They looked back to see another figure dressed in the exact same cloak as the other girl, but she had a much more feminine, higher-pitched voice. The one carrying the giant wrapped package secured it to her back before letting her arms vanish beneath her cloak again. Well, sorry, but not all of us have the convenience of having all of our luggage wrapped around our bicep like you do. Oh, don't whine. I'm not whining. Merely making an observation. Well, let's hurry up. The other girl gave a cheerful smile beneath her hood before turning around. The car is waiting for us so we can get there before midnight if we hurry. The girl with the massive object gave an affirming hum before following after her companion and heading towards the exit of the airport, leaving everybody else at the pickup spot just staring at their retreating forms with blank shock and awe. Devil, I'm surprised you wanted to walk there with me, Rias noted as she and Kaneko walked along the empty streets near the edge of Kuo town towards the apartment building. I'm sorry I couldn't get a magic circle fixed on his location. I try to get a point on him and it feels like it only works half the time. I suppose this was one of those times it didn't. It's fine. As long as we don't get rained on, that will be good, Kaneko stated while looking up at the black clouds and around the area of town she didn't usually travel through. I didn't know Senpai lived so close. Yeah. Rias looked back the way they came, just 30 minutes. Maybe I should just ask you to come by sometimes and make sure he's not getting himself into any trouble. Kaneko looked ahead. I wouldn't mind. She wondered something and asked, why don't you just call him? He doesn't have a phone. Kaneko gave a small look of surprise and intrigue at that. No one didn't have a phone nowadays. This made it difficult to reach him if all they could do to contact him was go find him in person. And considering the only places they knew to find him outside of school was the ramen shop and his apartment, if he decided to go anywhere else he would be off their radar. Kaneko nodded. He needs a phone. I agree, Rias stated before giving a solemn sigh and shook her head, but then there's the fact we would have to teach him how to work with it. If that happens I might ask you to handle that pain in the butt. Kaneko tilted her head. Why me? Because if I did it he'd probably moan and daydream and purposefully ignore everything I say in an effort to annoy me even though I know he's listening. That's just how he works. Kaneko deadpanned. That's a pretty accurate guess about what he'd do. Yeah. Rias then gave a giggle and patted the white-haired girl's head, but he would probably listen to you. He likes you. Kaneko seemed confused by that fact. Really? Yep. Rias nodded. He went out of his way to talk with you. You both fought together during the raiding game. And you're the only person he willingly brought to that little ramen shop he works at. I'm jealous of how comfortable he is with you. You don't have to be. He likes you more. Rias was surprised by Kaneko speaking up to say that as the short girl kept looking forward. He already told me once how much his life had been changing since he met everyone. And that because of you, his days have been getting better. Since you changed him he's gotten happier. Kaneko looked up at her master with a small smile on her face. He likes you the most, bucko. Rias giggled. Well, maybe we can just ask him. She looked back up and started recognizing the area around them. We're almost there. Around the corner and. When the two girls rounded the corner, they stopped and stared at all the construction barriers, orange cones, drilling and digging equipment, and trucks that filled the usually empty street. They spotted a pattern of holes in the ground that had been cleared out and prepared to be filled in again with fresh concrete. And a light post that had been torn off to be replaced with a fixed, functional replacement. I'm saying that all this loud shit is making it even harder to sleep in this pit, ya daft old bastard. Look, you sleep here. You get used to noise. so stop complaining or I'll charge you an extra 10,000 yen for sleeping here. If charging that much then ya could at least fix the water from being brown and black. Nothing good enough for you ingrates. How about anything would suffice, the foreigner yelled before flipping the landlord off and walking away in an angry huff. Rias spotted the familiar man and ran up to him, Mr. Marco. The European stopped walking and looked aside to see the crimson-haired girl run up to him. He faced her, Oi, ain't ya Naruto's bird from the other day? Rias something, right? Rias stated before looking around, what happened? Oh, some crazy shit happened last night when we weren't looking. Some crazy drunk driver Musta crashed into the lamp and bent it cause it was all broken and everything. And somehow he shattered the ground and left a bunch of these holes in it all over the court. He gestured to the surrounding trucks and cars. Now we got these assholes working all day and not shutting the fuck up. Not like this place looked any better beforehand. Rias was looking around at the strange damages in the courtyard of the building before she felt Kenko tug on her sleeve. She looked down before seeing the girl's eyes fixed on one place and following her gaze. She saw a room without a door that appeared to have been blown off its hinges. Marco followed their eyes and up to the room. Ah yeah, and there's Naruto's door too. Damn thing blew off its hinges and flew off. I thought someone might have tried knocking down his door, but the thing fell down here in the street. What the hell could have done that? The man sighed and rubbed his neck. I'm tellin' ya, this place is going to hell. Rias swallowed the lump in her throat before asking a question that had slowly been building with dread in her stomach. She felt Kaniko's hand grip her sleeve tighter as she asked, Where's Naruto? Naruto? Marco thought before shaking his head. He wasn't here during the work or when they were asking question, to be honest. I got no idea where he is, devil. Wow, it's really pouring down now. Yuto noted from underneath his umbrella as he looked up at the black clouds that covered the town. He was glad he decided to take an umbrella with him after all. He really didn't want to get caught under this downpour while shopping for supplies. Yuto walked back home and looked down at his bag. I should probably set some stuff aside for my bento tomorrow. He looked over the extras he had and gave a small hum. Maybe I should try making one for Gasper-kun too? Kaniko-chan said he hasn't been eating very well lately. Ding. Yuto felt his phone vibrate and switched the hand holding his bag so he could reach into his pocket. He pulled it out and saw the message Rias had sent. Come to club. Urgent. The knight looked at the message and felt a sense of dread start to fill his belly. In their line of work, when someone as cool and composed as Rias Gremory was worried about something, it was really bad. Yuto was preparing to sprint to his home and teleport to school from there. Help! But he froze when he heard a voice scream out over the pouring rain and echo through the street. The platinum blonde looked around critically and tried to locate the origin of the scream. But he didn't have to wait long as a man dressed in Christian robes stumbled from around the corner and tried to get back to his feet. He looked around in a panic before finally spotting the young man standing to the side and reached out to him. Please help me, he's coming. Yuto hesitantly took a step back and looked at the man with a hint of confusion. A priest was asking a devil for help. Even if he didn't know he was a devil, why would he ask someone off the street for assistance? It was suspicious. The priest got up to his feet. You have to hide me, if he finds me I'll be. Schwip Yuto stared in shock as a blade with a glowing aura pierced through the priest's chest and caused a line of blood to shoot from his chest and stain the street. The priest looked down at the tip of the blade sticking out from his chest and let out a pained gasp before his eyes rolled up and became void of life. The blade was slowly pulled out from his chest, the sound of steel scraping against the stiff bone, before it was finally freed from its confines in a massive spray of blood. The priest's corpse immediately fell to its knees and harshly landed face down, blood seeping from the wounds and flowing down the stream with the rain. The figure that had committed the murder stood there in silence with the glowing sword hanging by his side. Yuto kept a keen eye on the man and apprehensively took a step back. But the figure dashed towards him in an instant as Yuto created a sword to block the blading from cleaving him in half. A bolt of lightning stretched across the sky and the knight got a clear view of the man before him. His eyes narrowed and he said the name with disgust coding his words, Fried Selzen. The psychotic exorcist grinned manically and gave a disturbed chuckle. Well hello, sexy handsome devil-san. How have you been doing? I've been quite fine actually. Much better considering I haven't had to see your face for nearly a month. Yuto was struggling to gain ground against the crazed enemy before he pushed back and dropped to his knees to cut Fried's legs, causing the exorcist to jump and flip several feet backwards for safety. The swordsman stood back up and looked down at the dead priest at his feet. The knight tightened his grip on his sword. You're attacking priests now too. Goodness, you've gone even further off the deep end since I last saw you. Ah, you remember our last time. That's sweet, Fried amusingly stated as he hugged himself with one arm and shifted around like he couldn't stay in one place. He smiled, and if you really must know, I'm not attacking guys like this for shits and giggles. I mean, I get tons of shits and giggles while I'm doing it, but it has a purpose. He held the sword in his hand up and it started giving off a powerful aura. I gotta keep practicing with this baby if I want to get used to it. Yuto examined the sword in silence before his eyes slowly started to widen in horror. That aura. That power. That sense of connection it was giving off to him. All the horrible me worked and traumas playing through his head again. No, it can't be. Fried saw the look on his face and groaned even wider while teasing, you know what it is, don't you? Yuto swallowed the lump in his throat before his eyes constricted in anger and he growled out the words over the sound of pouring rain. Excalibur. Devil. The sound of thunder crashing rocked the abandoned church on its foundation before the doors quickly swung open and two figures ran inside for protection. They started slowing down from their quick dash into cover from the rain as they looked over their drenched cloaks. One of them bemoaned, "Ah geez. I almost got soaked through." She grabbed the edges of her cloak and started wringing out the water absorbed in it. I don't remember the weather in Japan being so heavy like this. It's nothing to be surprised about. We had rainy days like this in Italy quite a lot, the other girl said as she pulled the wrapped object off her back and placed it against a row of seats. She looked over herself and saw how wet she got. Considering you just came from England, I thought you would have become used to bits of weather like this. I am. But I remember Japan being much brighter and sunnier than this. I guess we'll have to stay here for the night. Perhaps we should just make this our base of operations while we stay here. No better place for us than a church, even if it is abandoned. The other girl noted before she looked around and saw the broken aisle seats, shattered floor, and the cross that had fallen over and broke on the ground. She asked, what happened to this place? I heard it was a turf war or something. A dispute between a group of devils and fallen angels in this holy house. This town seems to be quite a center for chaotic activity if the reports are to be believed. The two girls reached up and pulled back their hoods. They were both young ladies with gorgeous and stunning features. One girl had blue hair with many different splits that traveled down to her chin. And on the right side of her hair was one fringe dyed in a bright green color. She undid the clasp of her cloak and pulled it off. We'll have to search quickly for the remaining pieces of Excalibur before they cause too much ruckus and plague this town even more than it already has. The other girl, a pretty young lady with long chestnut brown hair tied into twintails behind her back. She reassured her partner with a big smile, "Oh, we'll be fine. I can find our target without any problem. I grew up here, remember? You keep saying that but it doesn't exactly inspire confidence in me." She pouted, "Well that's because you're a killjoy. Devil, player 1 wins. Holy shit. I have never seen someone pull off that many Chun-Li kicks in a row. You're amazing man," Issei said with admiration towards the older man he was playing games with as the rain poured outside, "especially considering you hurt your hands so bad." The older man, a gentleman dressed in a comfy yukata with a mix of black and gold hair, just laughed at the devil's praise. He looked down at his bandaged hands. "What these? All I need are my fingers to win a fight like this. No problem. You know I thought it would have been kinda rude to fight you in a game like this considering you were hurt." The pervert looked back at the screen and saw the total loss he was at fighting the much more experienced gamer. He groaned, "But now I think I'll need an even bigger handicap to even hope of fighting you equally." "Ah, don't be so hard on yourself kid," the older man said as he patted Issei's back lightheartedly. "Once you play these games as much as I do, I'm sure you would be just as good." He grabbed the controller again. "You want to go another round?" Sure. Issei stated as he nervously took the controller and prepared for another round of Street Fighter. He asked with uncertainty, "But are you sure this is all you want me to do?" Most people usually summon devils like us for the purpose of fulfilling a need or task. But so far all we've done is play video games? Well, I needed someone to play with and now you're fulfilling that need right now. I think that's acceptable for a request. The man looked at Issei. Do you not want to play anymore? No, I'm fine. It's just a bit unusual is all. Well, I have a roommate but he doesn't really find any enjoyment out of playing games or watching movies or anything. I worry because he can't seem to appreciate any of the fun stuff around him. He started pressing away on the buttons and unleashing a barrage of combos as he Honda. Then I hear about a new devil that drives around everywhere on a bike and I felt my interest peak. I just had to meet you. And I must say I'm not disappointed. Issei gave a weak chuckle and hung his head. Yeah. Some people really like the whole arriving on bike bit now. I don't get that exactly. Don't devils fly or crawl out of the ground from pits of fire or something? Can't you do that? Well, that's a bit of a dramatization of what we can actually do, but it's close. But I'm new to this whole devil business and when I started I couldn't teleport to my jobs, so I drove around in a bike. I can teleport now with a little help but apparently the bike thing is my calling card now or whatever. Wow. That must suck. Meh. Issei shrugged before he felt his phone vibrate and he paused the game. He looked at the message sent from Rias and he realized he couldn't waste time playing games right now. He stood up. Oh shit. I am sorry but I had to go. The older man looked up at him. What is it? Is something wrong? My master is giving me a call about something urgent. Issei ran over to the door and grabbed his umbrella before giving an apologetic bow. I am very sorry I have to go like this. No, it's fine. If it's something important then you should definitely focus on that right now. Issei gave an appreciative nod. Thank you for understanding. It's okay, kid. The older man waved his apology off with an easy chuckle. I might call you over again sometime soon. Sure. I promise to come as quickly as possible. Issei opened up the door and gave one last farewell. Goodbye. He closed the door and started heading towards the elevator to take him down to the ground floor. He took out his phone and looked at the message again. What happened that got Bucko so worried? Perhaps something severe or unfortunate is about to occur? Issei rolled his eyes and glared at the jewel on his hand. Well, thanks, Diedrich. You want to try saying something a little more ominous and depressing next time? Forgive me, Issei. It's just that this is a rather common occurrence in the life of my hosts. Issei took interest in that statement as he raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The strength you get from this gauntlet will always draw in strong and ambitious people. Some you may find as comrades. Some. Not so much. Many of my hosts spent most of their lives facing dangers and adversities in times of crisis. Well, geez, you could have warned me about that. Issei deadpanned as he pressed the elevator button and waited for the lift to pick him up. He shook his head. But I'm really not interested in getting any more strength than needed. You're already helping me get stronger with the normal boosts, so if that's fine. It's not. I'm sorry, Issei, but as long as you hold the title of Sekiryuute, people will undoubtedly flock to fight and kill you. Especially now, with this strange change in the world's balance. Issei tilted his head. What strange change in the balance? And you will always have an adversary to clash against. Just as all of my hosts and I have clashed with for as long as I can remember. Against the White One. White One? Ding, the elevator arrived and Issei stepped in while still talking to his hand. Who's the White One? The door closed and the elevator descended. Dang. The second elevator arrived on the floor and opened to release its only passenger. A young man, wearing a black jacket with a gray shirt underneath it and red pants, walked out of the lift with a bag in his hand. He had gray hair that spiked over in one direction and pale, piercing blue eyes. He took a few steps forward before stopping and looking back at the elevators like he had missed something important. He shrugged his shoulders before continuing on to his room. He walked in. I'm back. I bought some ramen too. The older man smiled and looked back from his game. Hey Valley. I'm right in the middle of a fight. Do you want to take the second controller and face me? Not interested. Again. The young man stated stoically as he walked past the front room and headed towards the hallway. I've told you 100 times before I don't want to bother playing those childish games. The older man narrowed his eyes and groaned. Damn. You need to learn to lighten up, kid. You're gonna die young if you're so serious all the time. I don't care. He went down the hall. I'm going to bed. Right. The older man kept playing his game before he realized something important and jumped off the floor to chase after Valley. Valley, wait. There's something in there. Valley didn't stop in time and opened the door to his soundproof, luxury bedroom. Shoved up your fucking cocks, you goddamn pieces of shit. The silver-haired boy stood in the doorway silently as he looked at the blonde man with whiskers currently lying on his bed with two pairs of large and strange locks completely binding his arms and legs together. He thrashed around on the bed and kept screaming at the top of his lungs, "And when I get out of here I'm gonna make you fucking cunts regret this when I tear off your fucking heads and shit down your open throa." The door was quickly shut and all sound was blocked out. "Azazel?" the older man answered. "Yes." Valley looked up at him. "Why is there a man secured on my bed with restraints and screaming at the top of his lungs with profanity?" "Oh, him?" Azazel waved that off and gave a big grin. "Last night I tried talking to that kid at his apartment but he didn't seem to want to chat. In fact, he rushed me and tried to kill me with some pretty cool tricks." The older man scratched the back of his head. I guess staking out his house and appearing behind him at the dead of night must have spooked him a little, so he wasn't gonna listen to anything I said. He held up his left hand to show the bandages that wrapped around it. He was out to get me. But I guess that's what devils do when they see fallen angels behind them. Well, why is he here? Because I had to stop him somehow, so I hit him with this knockout pellet I've been working on and he passed out instantly. Unfortunately I panicked thinking people were gonna catch us like that, so I picked him up and brought him here. I thought he would attack again, so I secured his limbs with locks and threw him in your room." Valley's eye twitched. "Why my room? Didn't you hear him? He wasn't gonna shut up anytime soon, so I threw him in the soundproof room. Save me the headache. But he's been screaming for hours." Azazel stood there for a moment before shrugging his shoulders and reaching into his sleeve to pull out another pellet. He opened the door and threw it in. "This should help. Then I'll know, not the gas thing again, don't you?" Boom thud. Azazel closed the door as the pellet exploded and knocked Naruto out like a light. Azazel nodded. "That should give us another 12 hours. Valley looked at the door before looking up at his guardian. "So let me get this straight. You stalked a devil, appeared at his home in the middle of the night, knocked him out with a gas bomb, kidnapped him, brought him here, cuffed his limbs together so he couldn't escape, and threw him in a soundproof room so no one could hear him." Azazel nodded. "Yes." Valley felt the need to ask, "Why?" "Because, if I'm right." Azazel gave a big smirk at the thoughts in his head. "He might be the most interesting guy I've met since you." Valley raised an eyebrow and looked at the door that hid the man in question. He then looked down at the older man's hands. "So he nearly broke your hands in a fight?" "Huh? Oh no, he bruised my left hand pretty bad. When he woke up he started biting my right hand in anger. Man, was he pissed." Valley sighed and shook his head. This was so not worth the free lodging. Ugh, fucking stupid gas. Stupid asshole fallen angel and his stupid gas. Naruto groggily moaned as he lifted his head and felt his cheeks start to spread out again after being pressed against the floor for the whole time he was out. He shook his head before looking up at the clock to see how much time passed by during this sleep session. 17:53. Hey, that was at least sooner than usual. Maybe he was getting used to the gas. That stupid, shitty gas. 1, 2. He prepared himself before he pressed the large locks that encompassed his arms and hands together against the ground. He really wanted to use his hands to push himself up, but these locks while bonded together separated his hands and arms from the other. The same for the ones around his legs. He couldn't unlock them from the inside. He couldn't even do a hand seal. Not like they did much to help him nowadays anyway, but still. With some extra effort he pushed up, using his chest to keep him steady before quickly jerking sideways and resting against the bed before he fell over. He sighed and looked down at the locks again and thought. He could barely move with these things on. No one could hear him in here. No one knew where he was. In most cases he would have just used Sage Mode, broken out of here before that fallen angel guy knew he was gone. Get back to Rias, get some food, and come back here ready to rain fucking hellfire down on him. But it didn't work. Naruto closed his eyes again and steadied his breathing. He let every muscle and fiber in his body relax and fall into a rhythm. He could feel the energy and power of the surrounding atmosphere start to filter into him. It was still a strange sensation of taking in this world's natural energy compared to his home. Back then it was like his body was taking in a steady wave of warm water. like a calming shower or bath. But here it felt like hot air, encompassing him in a torrent as if he were standing on the edge of a volcano. Either way, the power slowly started to build. Asterisk beats to asterisk. Ah! Naruto yelled when he felt something like an electric shock run through his whole nervous system. His body shook uncontrollably before he fell back on the bed while the spasm continued to shake him. The sensation died down and Naruto took a deep breath before he opened one eye and looked down at the locks that bound him. The red lights that illuminated from the locks turned back into a steady green color to signal that no energy was being built up inside them. Somehow, this bastard knew he had senjutsu abilities before they met, and he made a pair of cuffs that stop him from gathering up enough natural energy to change into Sage mode. This guy sucked all kinds of ass, but even Naruto had to admit he was well prepared. Still pissed him off though, the whiskered blonde sighed and laid back in the bed before he just stared at the ceiling. His mind started turning back time and he recollected how he had ended up here in the first place. With that smug jackass and his smug jackass smile. "Devil, mind if I take some time to talk with you?" the mixed-haired older man said as he kept his confident smile while standing on the railing of the upper floor. The strange fallen angel's question hung in the air with a stagnant tension as he and the new devil continued to stare each other down. The 12 black wings that came out of the man's back steadily extended and retracted unconsciously as he awaited an answer. Naruto kept his eyes firmly locked with the other man's, until he slowly opened the door to his apartment and shuffled inside. He quietly shut the door behind him and left the older man standing outside without an answer. The fallen angel unlocked his arms before letting them hang by his sides. "Really? You're just going to leave without saying anything? I mean, I get the situation was kinda weird, but that's just bad manners." He got no reply. He tapped his foot on the railing impatiently. "Should I knock this time?" Something as his pocket started beeping to alert the man to the surrounding energies. He sighed and scratched the back of his head. "Kid, I've met a lot of people that can use abilities like that. I figured out ways to tell when you're gathering up energy. So you might as well." Bam! The door blasted off its hinges towards the fallen angel as he leapt off the railing at the last moment as the bent door flew through the air and bounced off the ground below. The older man floated in the air for a moment before he looked over at the doorway that was now absent a door. An eager smile came over his face as the boy stepped out into the light of the moon. Naruto glared up at the composed man that floated in the air without any fear or fret after the sudden attack came at him. Naruto already knew from the way this guy held himself and the sheer indifference he had at the first attack, as well as the power he could sense coming off him this moment. This guy was strong. Stronger than any other fallen angel he had met by a mile. Stronger than that Phoenix asshole riser by a long shot. He was on a completely different level, but with Sage mode, now so was he. The older man gave a small nod. "Okay, so it wasn't a trick or illusion, you really can use senjutsu. That's cool. Makes you that more interesting." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "How do you even know me? And how do you know I can use Sage mode?" "You'd be surprised what videos can be leaked really fast if you just look hard enough." The strange man replied before he raised his eyebrow. "Would you believe me if I said I totally came in peace and don't want to fight at all?" Naruto furrowed his strange eyes. "Would you believe I have a hard time believing that considering every fallen angel I've met so far has killed first, asked questions later? Plus you don't exactly inspire confidence when you sneak up in the middle of the night in front of someone's house like this." "Well, what else was I supposed to do considering when I arrived no one was home and you came back so late?" The older man raised his eyebrows jokingly. "Plus, house? Really? I've woken up in gutters from week-long binges in better places than this. You might want to consider relocating. Especially now that you just blew the door off your own home like that." Naruto looked back at the doorway just in time to see the last screw fall out of place from its empty slot. "Yeah. He sorta jumped the gun on that one." He shook his head to focus back on his encounter with the powerful individual above him. "All right, Mr. Peaceful Stalker. You want to come down here and show you don't want to fight?" The older man tilted his head and looked up in slight thought before a cocky smirk came over his face. He slowly started to lower himself to just a few feet above the ground but stopping and unfolding his arms. He held up his hand and a small light spear formed in his hand. "Well, I'd be absolutely lying if the scientist in me wasn't pleading to test this form out. So considering you still aren't gonna trust me at the moment, I might as well test you out. The fallen angel flicked his hand and the light spear came flying down at Naruto. The whiskered blonde stood his ground and appeared as if he was entirely ready to take the weapon head-on before he just slightly turned his body at the last possible moment and let the weapon explode a portion of the ground. The older man watched with genuine intrigue before he noticed the blonde with the strange eyes start to step forward. He created a handful of light spears before sending them soaring down at the boy who simply leaned at the last possible moment and avoided the attacks completely. The spears shattered the ground before Naruto grit his teeth and leapt up at the fallen angel with the desire to send him hurtling somewhere else. The mix-haired man raised an eyebrow at the blonde's sudden assault before immediately lowering himself while the kick flew over his head. He landed gently on the ground and looked up in time to see Naruto correct himself in the air and come dropping down on him. The fallen angel took a huge step back as the whiskered man landed and charged after him to attack. Ha! Naruto threw a jab at his enemy who leaned his body out of the way to dodge as he let the fist break into a lamppost. The fallen angel smirked at the man beside him before suddenly grunting as he felt like he failed and the fist was lodged in his ribs. He looked down and saw that he definitely did dodge the attack before his eyes met with the blonde's unwavering glare. Well well. The fallen angel's wings stretched out and flapped quickly to lift him up into the air and create a small gust of wind around Naruto. The blonde's hair whipped back and forth as the bent lamppost tipped over and fell into the street. The gust finally died down and Naruto looked up to see the fallen angel hover a dozen meters above him like a feather as he examined his side with curiosity. TCH. Naruto clicked his tongue before bending his knees and jumping up towards the older man, the extra power from Sage Mode carrying him up without any difficulty. The mix-haired man chuckled a little before reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small pellet he firmly held onto. You won't get away. Naruto came flying at the fallen angel and the older being held out his left hand in preparation to block. Naruto roared and threw out his fist, the strange man turning in the air and grabbing his fist with his hand even as a loud crack echoed from it. The blonde knew he had injured the man but he then realized that he couldn't escape from the grip on his fist. He was pulled inward by the broken hand and the fallen angel slammed the pellet down on Naruto's head, causing a quick burst of purple gas to pop out before Naruto went tumbling down towards the earth. He fell through the air before landing on a dumpster so hard it warped to his shape. The fallen angel slowly descended down to Naruto's side as the gas started to settle in and his vision started to blacken. The mix-haired man scratched his stubble with his working hand and joked, "Sorry about that, kiddo. I got a little carried away and got sucked up to the fight. When you've been missing out on a good fight as long as I have you sorta lose yourself in it." He looked around their surrounding before asking, we might have caused a bit of a scene. You think we can sit down and have a nice chat when you wake up?" His consciousness fading. His natural energy abandoning him as the gas started to work its magic. What could he say just before he slipped into sleep? "I'm gonna fucking kick your ass when I get up." Okay, well, that doesn't inspire confidence. The man sighed before Naruto's eyes finally started to close. "Well, when you wake up. Hopefully I would have found a way for us to have a nice little chat in peace." Devil. Naruto reopened his eyes with sardonic amusement as he looked back down at his restraints. Yep, nice little chat. Since he had passed out, all that had happened was he woke up, got angry, started swearing so much that he would have put street thugs to shame with his words, and get knocked out a few times with more of those gas pellets. He was not enjoying this experience. Plus he really needed the bathroom. The blonde relaxed against the side of his bed and he contemplated what this situation meant for him. Fallen angels and devils despised each other. At least that was the impression he got from that Rainare woman and her posse when they attacked. Rias said they had been fighting for millennia and her brother stated he fought in a war some time ago. Probably against them as well. By that logic, it seemed like they would want to capture him because he is the newest member of Rias peerage. She said her brother was someone very important in the underworld, so any leverage they could gain on him would be useful. Which meant they would probably torture him for information. Which was going to suck because he knew fuck all about anything they would want to know. But Naruto had a gut feeling that's not why that guy came to him. Speaking of that guy, he was strong. Like, way stronger than anybody else he had met so far. He put those other fallen angels to shame. He exuded confidence and power. He was calm and collected even when he was under attack. Those spears he made were fast and more powerful than the others he had seen. And he freaking sacrificed his hand to block a punch from him in Sage mode and didn't even flinch. Hated to admit it. But that was awesome. But why would someone like that want to meet with him? And how did he know about him anyway? He said something about leaked videos. And Kaichu said something about having a recording of the raiding game they fought in recently too. Did the video reach that fallen angel guy and he got interested in his Sage mode? Well, what could he possibly want from him? And how was he gonna get himself out of here? As Naruto was mulling this crisis over in his head, the door to the room clicked and slowly swung open. The blonde sat up in place and stared down the new arrival. The blonde's blue eyes met a silver-haired boy's yellow as the young man walked in with a tray in his hands. The two strangers just kept up their staring match in silence as the noise and light from the TV started to filter into the room. Naruto wasn't sure how well his unnerving stare was working considering this other guy had the most bored, uninterested gaze he had seen in a long time. If it's any consolation, I detest this situation more than you. Naruto raised an eyebrow skeptically. This was my room and I quite enjoyed the silence it provides away from that moron and his incessant gaming. But now he's put you in here and kicked me out onto the couch. I would have taken his bed, but I'm very much aware of the things he does in there. Now he's gone off somewhere and making me feed his pet. Naruto furrowed his eyes. Pet? You're locked away in a cage and kept silent because you're annoying. In no uncertain terms can you not be called a pet. The silver-haired youth bent down and placed the tray down to reveal a bowl of instant ramen steaming in its contents. There was a big conflict debating in the blonde's head at the moment. 1. It was ramen and he was hungry. 2. This guy delivered it and he couldn't be sure it wasn't filled with something. But, it was ramen. While Naruto argued with the right course of action to take, the youth sat down in the bed and picked up the tray before snapping the chopsticks. He started heartily digging into the prepared meal as the prisoner protested. Hey, what the fuck? Don't eat my meal. It's not your meal. I bought it so it's mine. The silver-haired boy pointed out, if you wanted food then you should have asked him to set some aside for you. Naruto seethed and growled in anger before reluctantly sitting back against the bed. He stared forward before motioning with a jerk of his head. Why exactly doesn't that window open? What happens when you need to air a fart or something? The young man spared the window a look before putting aside the tray and stepping over to the windowsill. He knocked on the window and scoffed, if you're trying to escape through the window then you would be wasting your time. It's made of some of the strongest material he could find and reinforced with enough magic and seals to withstand a surprise attack. In case any of the other factions tried to ambush while we were sleeping. So does the wall. He stood back up and turned around, so you aren't escaping through a window and... He paused when he noticed something about his meal. The bowl was empty. He spared the man sitting beside it a look as the blonde looked back innocently. He smiled and shook his head before raising his gauntlets up. I'm locked up, it wasn't me. It was probably him getting back by being snarky. Because the very obvious ramen satins around his mouth was a completely different story. Despite the loss of his meal, the young man could do nothing but chuckle lightly in amusement. He shook his head and stepped over to the bed. Well, I suppose that's what I get for ridiculing you. I guess I deserve that. He reached down to take the tray. Naruto shifted his legs as best he could and jumped up without the use of his feet, pushing off his knees and heading straight for the young man's head. He brought his locked arms down to try and crack his skull. The boy jerked his head aside at the last moment and avoided the ambush before grabbing Naruto's neck and slamming him down into the floor, getting a groan from the blonde before pinning his neck to the carpet and looming over him. The blonde growled through his teeth and continued to glare at the man over him as he furrowed his eyes in return. He scowled and held his hand over Naruto's face like he was prepared to pluck out his eyes. Whether you're his guest or pet doesn't matter to me. I am hardly the type to stand by and let someone attack me without any retribution in return. A few extra scars. Maybe a missing eye. What's the worst that could happen? He slowly started to lower his hand towards Naruto's face, his fingers wavering over the cerulean orbs as the blonde kept his scowl on tight. The fingers stopped just an inch over his head. Yes. What about it? The boy suddenly asked to no one as he raised an eyebrow. Really? Are you sure? You're certain of that? You've had a lot prior to me. You could just be jumbling up all of their faces into one big blur. No, I suppose you couldn't forget someone that did something like that. The silver-haired man's fingers curled and he retracted his hand as he tilted his head in thought. He hummed, now that I've gotten the chance to look. He does bear a striking resemblance to the other one. That can't be a coincidence. Naruto moaned in confusion as he was suddenly very uncomfortable being stuck with this crazy person. I'm not sure what you're talking about. But can you please let go now? I'm not sure I like a crazy guy holding my neck down like this. The silver stranger contemplated what he said before releasing his hold on Naruto's neck and standing up. He fixed the ruffle in his black jacket. Apologies. I'm sure for a normal person, it must seem weird for someone to start talking to himself out of the blue like that. Naruto shrugged. Actually, I get where you're coming from. I'm pretty much used to that. The silver-haired man ignored his comment and looked down at him inquisitively. You are a new devil for one of the peerages stationed in this town. Which means you must know of a man named Issei Hyodo, correct? Naruto's didn't answer except for a quirk in his eyebrow. That was enough of an answer as he stood over the blonde and glared down sternly at him. Tell me, in your own opinion, what kind of man do you believe him to be? A psychotic, boob-loving, clothes-ripping horn dog who'd rather forfeit his own life if that meant there was any chance he would have sex with someone. You're not lying. No, I'm not lying. The silver-haired youth turned around and titled his head in wonder before whispering, has that happened with any of the ones before? No, I'm not asking about whether they had mistresses or concubines. I'm asking whether you would have used a description like that for any of his predecessors. He waited for a moment before chuckling. No? Oh really? Well, this is sure to be interesting. Hey! The strange youth looked back when he heard the blonde speak as Naruto's dryly spoke from the floor. I'm gonna get you back for the next slam. Count on that. The silver-haired teen gave a lopsided smirk as he walked out the door and closed it behind him. I'll be waiting for the This Is It for Part 2. See you in the next part.